The scumbag betrayed and married another daughter, and Yun Yen used wine to drown his sorrows. Unexpectedly, he provoked the scumbag's uncle, Gu Chenyuan, who was in charge of a top-tier wealthy family. She fled, but men were like wolves and tigers, already marking her as their prey. Clouds and smoke cannot be shaken away, they cannot escape, they want to cry without tears. The man wished he could rub her into his bones and throw the bait. Be Mrs. Gu, let the scumbag call you aunt. Isn't that the best revenge? Yun Yen was shamelessly tempted, and from then on, the man helped her to face the scum and reach the pinnacle of her life. Everyone says that Mr. Gu loves Mrs. Gu extremely, it's like doting on the heavens, but only Yun Yen knows its central sourness. The old house is on fire and there is no way to save it. She has a sore waist, weak legs, and a hoarse voice every day, almost unable to get out of bed. Chapter 1. Indulging the Little Uncle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the late-night bar. Yun Yen drank one cup after another of spicy liquor. Today is the wedding day for her ex-boyfriend Gu Ziyu. They have been together for 3 years, and Yun Yen has been managing this relationship with great care. I thought I could achieve success, but I didn't want Gu Ziyu to turn around and abandon her for the sake of power, marrying the miss of the Jin family. Yun Yen thought of her years of hard work and found it ridiculous. She didn't know how much she had to drink before putting down her glass. She wobbled up and walked out, only to bump into a sturdy human wall in the hallway. Looking up, she saw a handsome and impeccable face. Since Gu Ziyu betrayed her, why does she still want to remain steadfast like a jade? She also wants to find a man, and she also needs to find the most handsome one. The one in front of me, it perfectly fits her aesthetic. As Yun Yen was about to retreat, he didn't want a pair of slender and powerful hands to grip her slender waist. The man lifted her up slightly, and then a scorching kiss fell like raindrops. Yun Yen couldn't bear it at all and struggled subconsciously. But a tiger's beard is not so easy to tease. The man shackled her, slowly savoring the small cake that was voluntarily delivered to her mouth. Surprisingly sweet, soft, it suits his taste very well. When Yun Yen regained consciousness, the person was already in the car. She sat on the man's lap, his kiss continuously falling, making her emit a sensitive moan. Yun Yen was indulged in ecstasy and a cold wind blew in from the window, causing her delicate body to tremble lightly. After sobering up a bit, she finally recognized the identity of the man in front of her, uncle. It's too late to recognize me now, isn't it? The man pinched her slender waist, his black eyes dark as night, and slowly bit her name. Cloud, smoke. Yun Yen could feel the dangerous aura on him and couldn't help but take a deep breath. I was wrong. Where's wrong? The man rubbed his slightly rough fingertips against her tender lips, which were red and swollen like cherries, with a hint of playfulness. Yun Yen couldn't speak, her cheeks were burning hot, but fortunately the dim light was not very noticeable. The man's fingers slowly slid down over her delicate chin, and finally her delicate and fragile neck. Yun Yen almost suspected that he would pinch himself the next second, even holding his breath unconsciously. I drank too much, I shouldn't offend you. Gu Chenyuan suddenly lost all interest. A man with his identity naturally disdains using any tough means against women, let alone the clouds and smoke, which makes his proud self-control lose control. Gu Chenyuan let go of her and said mercilessly, "Get off the car." Yun Yen felt relieved and almost immediately got off the car, not even looking back. When she returned to her residence, she still couldn't calm down and couldn't believe what had just happened. That man is Gu Chenyuan, the true ruler of the Gu family, Gu Ziyu's uncle. It is said that he showed amazing business talent when he was in his teens and started managing the Gu group at the age of 18. However, in just a few years, it has expanded Gu's business several times, becoming the largest multinational corporation in Asia by market value. And he himself has consistently dominated the top 10 global wealth lists. This man standing at the tip of the pyramid can be said to be the dream lover of countless socialites in the capital. Unfortunately, he didn't get close to women. It is said that he had an unforgettable white moonlight in his heart, so he didn't get married and start a family until the age of 30. Gu Ziyu is not a direct descendant of the Gu family, but a branch, and should be called Uncle Gu Chenyuan in terms of seniority. Yunyan and Gu Ziyu have been in love for 3 years, and have only seen this nominal elder a few times. They followed Gu Ziyu and called him little uncle a few times. Gu Ziyu showed great respect and fear towards Gu Chenyuan, seeming to have a slight hint of jealousy. Yunyan felt that this young uncle was not easy to provoke and had always kept a respectful distance. But never expected she drank too much today and even took the initiative to flirt with Gu Chenyuan. Gu Chenyuan surprisingly did not refuse, and even showed a further trend. Just in retrospect, Yunyan blushes and her heart beats. She and Gu Ziyu have been together for 3 years, and they have never been so intimate or stimulated before. It seems that not all rumors are true. Feeling drunk, Yunyan slept for a while. When she woke up, there were several missed calls in her phone. It was called by a dog man named Gu Ziyu, and it was also brought by his best friend Qin Lanlan. Yunyan immediately called Qin Lanlan. As soon as the phone was connected, Qin Lanlan's angry voice came over. Yen, that dog man Gu Ziyu was actually asking why you didn't come at the wedding today. Upon hearing Gu Ziyu's name, Yunyan's heart couldn't help but ache. I have severed ties with him. Qin Lanlan became even angrier. His grandfather, Gu Ziyu, is not afraid to pull an egg with his legs. After scolding the scumbag, she comforted Yunyan and said, "It's okay, it's hard to find a 3-legged toad. There are plenty of 2-legged men. Let's find someone better than him and hit him hard in the face." Better than Gu Ziyu, a handsome face couldn't help but emerge from Yunyan's mind. But soon, she shook her head and shook off this absurd idea. Gu Chenyuan is not a man she can easily provoke. Qin Lanlan asked again, Yen, what are your plans next? I want to resign. Yunyan's tone was firm. After recognizing Gu Ziyu's character, her heart also died. Naturally, she couldn't continue to stay by his side, be his close secretary, and continue to be his ox and horse. I support you. Qin Lanlan immediately cheered her on. You are already excellent, gold can shine everywhere. Without you, it is Gu Ziyu's biggest loss. Upon hearing this, Yunyan felt warm in her heart and said a few more words to her before hanging up the phone. The next day, Yunyan went to resign. Gu Ziyu's company is only a branch of the Gu group, and the true headquarters is controlled by Gu Chenyuan. Upon arriving at the company, Yunyan had just submitted her resignation when she unexpectedly ran into Gu Ziyu as her enemy's path was narrow. Who allowed you to resign? He stared at Yunyan with a handsome face and tore his resignation letter into pieces. Yunyan looked at him coldly, not even wanting to say a word more to him, and was about to leave immediately. Gu Ziyu grabbed her and said in an unfriendly tone, Yunyan. Let go. Yunyan struggled, his face full of disgust. During the tug and tug, her collar was pulled apart slightly, revealing a small patch of delicate skin. Gu Ziyu saw the ambiguous red marks on the snow-white skin at a glance, and his pupils suddenly tightened. He is a man, and he knows exactly what that is. Gu Ziyu was furious in an instant, grabbing Yunyan's shoulder and asking. Yunyan, where did you hang out last night? How dare you give me a green hat? Chapter 2. The Disaster of Imprisonment. You are listening at novel.full.audio. Yunyan lowered her head along with his gaze and also saw those kiss marks. It is the trace left by Gu Chenyuan. She immediately covered it with her hand. Gu Ziyu exuded a sinister aura all over his body, wishing to strangle the woman in front of him, and said aggressively. Did you sleep with a man? Speak up. He looked like a husband who had cheated on his wife. Mr. Gu, this has nothing to do with you. We have already broken up. Yun Yen suddenly felt very ridiculous. After breaking up, you are also my woman. Who exactly is that adulterer? Gu Ziyu felt that Yun Yen had betrayed him, and his face was extremely ugly. In the past 3 years, neither he nor Yun Yen has crossed the Thunder Pond. Unexpectedly, now he has been surpassed by other men. How can he be willing? Yun Yen remained silent. She could never tell him that the man was Gu Chenyuan. Gu Ziyu thought she wanted to protect the man, and her anger burned fiercely, as if she wanted to burn the clouds into ashes. Yun Yen, I didn't expect you to be so lowly. I will make you regret it. Yun Yen left the place where she worked for 3 years, feeling a bit sad in her heart. She is Gu Ziyu's close secretary, and over the past 3 years, she can be said to have been diligent and even had stomach bleeding while drinking alcohol at social events several times. This helped Gu Ziyu establish a firm foothold in the Gu group by winning those important projects. I didn't expect her efforts to be rewarded with abandonment and betrayal. Gu Ziyu has already reached her bottom line, and she will never turn back. Just thinking of his harsh words, she couldn't help feeling a little uneasy in her heart. After a few calm days, Yun Yen received a call from her family. Yen, there's a problem with your father's company. The police have taken him away. Mother Song Yalan's voice on the phone was full of anxiety, almost crying. Yun Yan's heart thumped for a moment, giving off an ominous feeling, but she still tried her best to calm her mother's emotions. Mom, don't worry yet, tell me what's going on. Song Yalan explained in detail that it turned out that Yun Yan's father, Yun Bai, had won the bid just a few days ago. I didn't expect this project to explode, and the partner directly threw all the blame on Yun Bai, making him a scapegoat. If convicted, Yun Bai is likely to face 10 years in prison. After listening, Yun Yen always felt that things were not that simple. She said to Song Yalan, Mom, take care of yourself and I will find a way to find a lawyer. With a hint of hope, Song Yalan said, Yen, you and Gu Shao are boyfriend and girlfriend, and he won't sit idly by. Yunjia's company is not located in Beijing, but in Haisha. Due to poor information, Song Yalan is currently unaware of Gu Ziyu's decision to marry someone else. Mom, he and I have already broken up. Don't mention this person's name again in the future, Yun Yen explained briefly to Song Yalan. Although Song Yalan was full of doubts, she did not ask further. After all, the matter with Yun Bai is more important now. They must find a way to not let Yun Bai suffer unjustly. After hanging up the phone, Yun Yen immediately consulted a lawyer, but the result was not very optimistic. The lawyer told her that if she could hire the ace lawyer in Beijing, Lu Zheng, Yun Bai might be safe and sound. But when Lu Zheng takes on cases, he starts at 3 million yuan. If it had been before, the Yun family could have taken out these 3 million. But now all the assets of the Yun family have been frozen, and Yun Yen only has a deposit of several 100,000 yuan, so she can't afford to pay her lawyer's fees. For today's plan, we can only borrow money to get through the difficulties first. Yun Yen quickly thought of the Uncle Yun Song's family who lived in the capital. In the past, they gained a lot of benefits through her relationship with Gu Ziyu. Now that they are in trouble, the uncle's family should not sit idly by. It has to be said that Yun Yan's ideas are still a bit too naive. She had just arrived at her uncle's house to explain her purpose, and before she could even sit down, she was kicked out. My cousin Yun Mengting, who used to warmly please her, changed her harsh expression and pushed her to the ground. Yun Yen fell to the ground, her tender palm was scratched, and there was a burning pain. Yun Mengting stood tall and looked at Yun Yen, her sharp tone full of schadenfreude. Yun Yen, do you think you're still Gu Shao's legitimate girlfriend? Gu Shao doesn't even want you anymore, you're nothing now. Want to borrow money? Dream. Yun Yen did not expect that Yun Mengting's family would be so ungrateful and unscrupulous, falling into a trap and throwing stones. She only truly saw their true colors today. When in power, they are as close as one family. When losing power, Yun Mengting and her family did not gain any benefits, so they immediately kicked them away with one kick. The world is cold and treacherous, but that's all. Yun Yen too left without looking back, his spine straightened out. She knew these people were watching their jokes and wished to step them into the dust, but the more she did, the more she couldn't give up. But unexpectedly, in the evening, Yun Mengting called Yun Yen in a strange tone. My dad said, after all, it's a family. We can't just turn a blind eye when Uncle Erye is in trouble. Yun Yen, if you want to borrow money, come to Pin-Sien-Gu and I'll wait for you here. After hanging up the phone, Yun Yan's heart was filled with doubts. Is it really because of Yun Song that Yun Mengting's attitude has changed so much? I always feel like something's not quite right, but now, Yun Yen couldn't care too much and rushed over according to the address given by Yun Mengting at the agreed time. EP1-10 is a high-end entertainment club, and Yun Yen has also been with Gu Ziyu before, so it can be considered a familiar place. Yun Yen arrived at the designated private room, which was empty and Yun Mengting had not yet arrived. About 10 minutes later, the door of the private room was pushed open from outside. Yun Yen thought it was Yun Mengting, but when she turned her head to look, she saw an old man with a fat head and big ears, and was slightly stunned. Miss Yun is indeed very beautiful. The old man squinted his eyes and looked at Yun Yen with a lewd light, wishing to take her to justice. Yun Yen looked at his bald head, trembling beer belly, and a mouthful of smoked yellow teeth, and his stomach couldn't help but churn. I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. She immediately picked up her bag and wanted to leave. Unexpectedly, the old man was like a fat pig, tightly blocking the door with a wicked smile. I heard you are very short of money, looking for men to sell everywhere. It's better to sell it to me. I'll give you 500,000 yuan a month. As he spoke, he extended his evil salty pig hand towards Yun Yen. If Yun Yen hadn't realized at this moment that she was being calculated by Yun Mengting, then she would be a fool. She was both shocked and angry in her heart, and quickly avoided the disgusting hand. Is that what Yun Mengting told you? Chapter 3. Dangerous Ideas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old man looked at Yun Yen with a flirtatious tone and said, You've come, why are you pretending to be aloof? Yun Yen took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. You're right, but I don't believe you. It must be written in black and white, he said, you have quite a lot of ulterior motives, afraid that I won't be able to go for nothing. The old man thought she was trying to take Joe as an opportunity and gradually relaxed his guard. Unexpectedly, Yun Yen took advantage of this moment to take out a bottle of anti-wolf spray from his pocket and sprayed it on him quickly. Ah! The burning pain instantly made the old man cover his eyes, almost unable to stand steadily. Yun Yen immediately escaped, not wanting the old man to react quickly and hold on to her long hair in pain. A sharp pain came from her scalp, and she was instantly dragged back. The old man was furious and slapped her in the face. Little slut, how dare you plot against me? Today, I'm playing with you. Yun Yen was beaten to the point where he had no strength to fight back, with a burning pain in his cheeks and a buzzing sound in his ears. The old man didn't even have time to close the door and rudely pulled at her clothes. Yun Yen struggled desperately, but the more she struggled, the more excited the other person became. In a hurry, she took out Gu Chenyuan's name and blurted out, If you dare to touch me, Gu Chenyuan will not let you go. Who are you fooling? If you have anything to do with Gu Chenyuan, would you even sell it? The old man didn't believe it at all, tearing off her clothes and threatening, Serve me well, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. Just as the words fell, a powerful and terrifying force struck. The old man didn't even react when he was instantly flipped to the ground and made a heavy muffled noise, bang. He screamed in pain and cursed. His mother, who dares to hit me? The next second, the cold and hard fists fell like a storm. The old man didn't even have a chance to see who the other person was, so he was beaten and bruised, pressed down on the ground and rubbed fiercely. Don't hit me, don't hit me. He cried bitterly and begged for mercy, but what he got in exchange was not mercy, but intensification. And Yun Yen was completely stunned, slumped on the ground, watching helplessly as the old man was beaten into a pig's head that even his biological mother couldn't recognize. After an unknown amount of time, the old man was thrown on the ground like garbage, looking half dead. An expensive high-end handmade custom leather shoe slowly ran over the back of his hand. Ah! The old man let out a pitiful scream like killing a pig, as if pretending to be a corpse. Creak creak creak. Yun Yen could even hear the sound of his bones shattering, which made him feel a little creepy. The old man finally couldn't bear the intense pain, his eyes rolled white, and he passed out directly. The clouds and smoke lingered for a long time, until a tall figure enveloped her like a giant web, and a familiar yet domineering aura swept over her. She slowly lifted her eyes, her beautiful pupils slightly contracting. "Uncle." The man looked down at her from above and expressionlessly threw down a suit jacket. But for Yun Yen, it feels like a divine arrival. Yun Yen was wearing Gu Chenyuan's suit jacket and sitting in his car. "Thank you, uncle." She was grateful and looked at him with watery eyes. "How do you thank me?" Gu Chenyuan loosened his tie and his throat tightened slightly. "If there is anything that uncle needs my help in the future, I will definitely." Yun Yen couldn't continue, and these words made her blush. How could there be any place in the future where someone like Gu Chenyuan could be in need of her help? I estimate the other party will feel that what she said is empty talk. "Are you very short of money?" Gu Chenyuan suddenly asked. "The situation has indeed been a bit difficult lately," Yun Yen said apologetically. Gu Chenyuan didn't say a word, but Yun Yen bit his lip lightly and bravely said, "Uncle, can you lend me some money? I will definitely repay you as soon as possible." Perhaps because Gu Chenyuan saved her, Yun Yen instinctively felt that Gu Chenyuan was a good person and rushed to seek medical treatment. However, after speaking up, she immediately regretted it. Gu Chenyuan is Gu Ziyu's little uncle, not her. It's not appropriate for her to ask for money. Yun Yen was thinking about how to remedy it. Unexpectedly, Gu Chenyuan smiled rather than smiled. After looking at her for a while, he said, "I don't need to repay the money I borrowed." "Have you decided?" Yun Yen was stunned for several seconds before finally realizing it. The matter between adult men and women is tacit. Yun Yen didn't expect that after that night, Gu Chenyuan would still be interested in him. To be honest, Gu Chenyuan needs to have a figure, appearance, status, and status such a man, even a woman cannot refuse. As soon as Yun Yen thought about Gu Chenyuan being Gu Ziyu's uncle and himself being a little uncle, she couldn't help but feel a tingling scalp and a strong sense of immorality. Gu Chenyuan's ideas are very dangerous. Yun Yen didn't have the courage to do such a heinous and immoral thing, so she took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, uncle, I didn't say it." Gu Chenyuan did not have any strong hobbies, and considering that she had just encountered danger, he gentlemanly sent her home this time. "Thank you, uncle. I will return the clothes to you after dry cleaning," Yun Yen said as she got off the car. Gu Chenyuan couldn't deny it and drove away in the blink of an eye. Yun Yen watched as his car disappeared, then turned around and went upstairs, recalling what had happened today. If it weren't for Gu Chenyuan's appearance, she might have been. Yun Mengting was so malicious that she disregarded her family affection and even wanted to give birth to and destroy her. She took note of this account. Yun Yen has finished washing up and is preparing to rest. A strange number called, and as soon as she connected, she heard a familiar and disgusting voice. "Yun Yen, how long do you plan to cover up for that adulterer? Have you even disregarded your own father for the sake of a wild man?" Gu Ziyu asked angrily, as if he was the biggest victim. Upon hearing his words, Yun Yan's speculations in her heart were instantly confirmed to be very strong. She said angrily, "Gu Ziyu, it was indeed you who caused the trouble. Yun Yan, you betrayed me. Don't blame me for being ruthless." Gu Ziyu sneered. Yun Yen was almost amused by his words and asked in response, "Guziyu, do you have the face to say that? You're really not afraid of thunder and lightning?" Guziyu gritted his teeth and said, "Yun Yen, as long as you tell me who that adulterer is, I can let bygones be bygones, treat you as if nothing has happened, and make you my lover. Your father and the company will be fine." Upon hearing this, Yun Yen felt a wave of nausea and almost vomited. She was really blind at first, that's why she liked Guziyu, this scumbag. Chapter 4. Erye likes this. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yun Yen didn't even want to say a word extra, hung up the phone directly, and even blacklisted Guziyu's phone number. The next day, she called Qin Lanlan to borrow money, and without hesitation, Qin Lanlan lent her all her savings. Yun Yen was deeply moved in her heart, but the money was still quite short. She had to find a way to raise 3 million as soon as possible. Biting her teeth, she took off the crescent jade pendant from her neck and sent it to the pawnshop. Song Yalan had said before that this was what Yun Yen was wearing when the couple adopted her, and it should be related to her biological parents, so she should keep it well. After so many years of nurturing, Yun Yen had already regarded Yun Bai and Song Yalan as her biological parents, and they gave her the best love. This jade pendant is nothing more than an external object in front of family affection. The pawnshop owner looked at the condition and said, "Live for 300,000, die for 500,000. Yun Yen bit his lip and made up his mind to say, "Die hard." Coming out of the pawnshop, she touched her empty neck, feeling inexplicably lost. Qin Lanlan learned about Yun Yen's urgent need for money, so she introduced her to a job that pays quickly. Yun Yen knew that Qin Lanlan would not harm her, so she took the address and phone number given by Qin Lanlan and came to a luxurious bar called Night in the capital. The boss is a woman in her 30s and also a friend of Qin Lanlan, named Mina. Mina personally interviewed her and was very satisfied with Yun Yen's appearance and figure. "Listen to Lanlan, you used to major in dance." Yun Yen nodded. If it weren't for Guziyu changing her career, she would have gone abroad to study. The teacher once said that she is very talented and may become a top dancer in the future. However, she ruined her future for a man and was so angry that the teacher didn't want to see her again. Nowadays, Yun Yen feels like his original self was completely immersed in concrete. Lanlan told you about the job responsibilities, right? You don't have to worry, we are a serious place and there won't be anything messy. Mina continued to Yun Yen, you can come over and dance once every Tuesday and Friday. Can you come on stage today? Now. Yun Yen was slightly surprised, but soon realized that this might be a test of Mina's strength, and success or failure depended on it. That's right. Mina nodded, freestyle. Okay. Yun Yen didn't have stage fright and went backstage to change her clothes, while also doing warm-up exercises. Mina put on a mask to keep her mysterious, which is also the marketing strategy of the bar. To be honest, Yun Yen is a bit nervous. Because she hasn't danced in 3 years. But standing on stage, when the spotlight came down, Yun Yen's tension suddenly disappeared, as if he had returned to the most familiar place. The music starts randomly, it's a Korean dance song. Yun Yen almost instinctively began to dance, although the initial movements were somewhat unfamiliar, the foundation of many years was still there, and soon he gradually entered a better state and integrated into the music. Many guests below were attracted. Meanwhile, the VIP location on the second floor. I haven't seen this little girl before. Has a newcomer arrived at night? Ji Ruffing rubbed her chin, her beautiful peach blossom eyes charming and affectionate, and joked, Lawyer Lu, come and see if it's your dish. My heart is only filled with work, said Lu Zhengleashan, fake solemnity. Ji Ruffing sneered and turned his head to continue admiring, only to catch a glimpse of a certain Buddha beside him, staring steadily at the graceful and colorful girl on stage. He widened his eyes, thinking he was mistaken, after all, this master is famous for not being close to women. Gu Chenyuan's black eyes were as deep as the night, looking down at the girl on the stage from a high position. Yun Yen was only wearing a simple white T-shirt short skirt, perfectly revealing a small fair and soft waist. Her beautiful and symmetrical legs were long and straight, making her feel like she had walked out of a manga. She dances to the rhythm of the music, adding to her graceful figure and full of vibrant vitality, like an agile little fox that cannot be moved away from her gaze. Ji Ruffing couldn't help but bite Lu Zheng's ear and said, "I didn't expect Mr. Gu to like this. It's really surprising." Yun Yen finished a dance on stage, feeling a little breathless. She casually looked up but met a pair of black eyes that looked like falcons. She was so shocked that she twisted her feet and almost fell. Gu Chenyuan. How could he be here? Did he recognize her? Yun Yen hurriedly stepped down from the stage, but the guests were still somewhat unsatisfied and wanted to see her true face. Mina was even more satisfied with Yun Yen as she fully observed the guests' reaction. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, everyone. This is our reserved program. Next, she will participate in the dance competition at our bar. Everyone can fully support their favorite contestants, and the champion will take off their mask. The way of support is naturally to buy alcohol in real money, and the contestants will also receive corresponding commissions." It has to be said that this gameplay has aroused the interest of many guests. Yun Yen was about to go to the changing room to change clothes, but was stopped by Mina. "Wait, Yun Yen." Mina explained an unwritten rule in the bar. There was a guest who bought 500,000 yuan of wine and recorded it in your name, which is the highest in the room today, so you need to toast them. Is that okay? 500,000. Yun Yen was somewhat surprised, but nodded quickly. Just a toast, there's nothing I can't agree to. And for 500,000 yuan of wine, she takes a 30% commission, which is 150,000 yuan. This is not a guest, it is clearly her god of wealth. Mina didn't let her take off her mask, which hit Yun Yen's chest right. She subconsciously didn't want to be recognized by Gu Chenyuan. But reality often comes with what we fear. "This is Mr. Gu." Mina led Yun Yen over to meet people and respectfully introduced, "Mr. Gu, this is our new contestant number 9. Yun Yen never expected that her god of wealth tonight would be Gu Chenyuan. Seeing Yun Yen still wearing a mask on his face, Ji Ruffing snorted with some dissatisfaction. Gu Erye bought 500,000 yuan of wine and still can't see her face. "Are you too cunning, boss?" Mina wore a signature smile on her face and said, "Ji Shao is joking. This is our rule. You can support our players more, and after the game is over, you can naturally see the true face of Mount Lu." Ji Ruffing wanted to say something more, but was interrupted by Gu Chenyuan in a moderate manner, "Isn't it a toast?" Mina immediately stepped aside and pushed Yun Yen up, whispering in her ear, "Sweetheart, your mouth." Yun Yen was driven to the shelves by ducks and regained his senses. The man's cold and sharp gaze fell heavily on her, with a hint of scrutiny, as if he could penetrate her body and see through her soul. Chapter 5. Gu Shao's Bad Shoes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The strong sense of oppression made Yun Yen feel empty in her heart, but she could only force herself to remain calm and not look away. "Mr. Gu, thank you for your support. I have a toast to you." She was afraid that Gu Chenyuan would hear her voice, so she pinched her throat and picked up her glass and took 2 steps forward. Unexpectedly, these 2 steps happened to step on Gu Chenyuan's foot. She accidentally sprained and fell towards the man, just in his arms. Gu Chenyuan wrapped his hand around the slender waist of the girl, incredibly soft, as if a newly born willow branch in spring was about to break with a gentle pinch. Yun Yan's face collided with his sturdy chest through the mask, causing pain that made his eyes sparkle with gold stars. The man's voice was as magnetic as metal in his ear, making his heart tingle. "Your way of toasting is quite unique, Miss 9. He said. Yun Yan's behavior was no different from throwing herself into an embrace. When she regained her senses, her cheeks instantly burned. "I'm sorry Mr. Gu, I didn't mean to." She almost immediately stood up and apologized subconsciously. Due to nervousness, Yunyan accidentally leaked a trace of the original sound. Fortunately, Gu Chenyuan's expression was not unusual and he didn't seem to hear it. Mina's heart was in her throat. Yunyan had only just arrived on the first day, so she didn't offend Gu Chenyuan, did she? This master is not a kind-hearted and soft-hearted master. She opened her mouth and was about to speak for Yunyan. Unexpectedly, the man spoke in a low voice and said, "It's okay." Yunyan breathed a sigh of relief in her heart and choked her throat, saying, "Then I'll toast you again." This time she was careful and steady, offering a glass of wine to Gu Chenyuan without any problems. Yunyan originally thought that his success had been achieved, but Ji Rufeng, who didn't want to sit on the other side, suddenly spoke in a playful tone. "Shouldn't Sister Nine also toast me? You've dirted my clothes." Yunyan looked over and only then did she see a small wine stain on Ji Rufeng's light-colored coat. It should have been accidentally splashed by her when she fell into Gu Chenyuan's arms just now. "Sorry." She glanced at Mina. Mina's face turned pale. It's a rule to only offer a glass of wine. If this rule is broken, other guests may also be dissatisfied. Yunyan understood and was about to politely refuse. At this moment, Gu Chenyuan spoke calmly, his voice low and deep, "How about I toast you to someone who likes to toast so much?" As soon as these words were spoken, Ji Rufeng's face suddenly changed. He chuckled and said, "I'm joking, how could Mr. Gu respect me? I respect you quite a bit. He doesn't mind living too long." Mina took advantage of this and let Yunyan go, saying that they would cover Ji Rufeng's dry cleaning expenses and would definitely restore Ji Rufeng's clothes to their original state. When Mina also went down, Ji Rufeng explained with a bitter face, "Big brother, I'm just teasing her, there's no malice." Before he could even see his face, Gu Chenyuan protected her. Could it be that he really took a liking to that little girl? Gu Chenyuan had no expression, as if nothing could stir waves in his heart. His tone was indifferent and casual, saying, "The project in the eastern suburbs has been cancelled." Ji Rufeng stared blankly, "That's his project?" He was in a hurry to move reinforcements and said, "Lu Zheng, please help me with a word." Lu Zheng lifted his golden glasses and said, "You deserve it." Ji Rufeng. The parties involved really regret it now. Yunyan returned to the dressing room, her heart still lifted, and she repeatedly recalled her performance and Gu Chenyuan's expression, confirming that he probably did not recognize her. After she changed her clothes and came out, Mina was standing outside waiting for her. Mina said in a warm voice, "We have a monthly salary here, but I heard from Lon Lon that you are in a hurry to use the money, so I will settle it for you now. Your commission tonight is 150,000 yuan. Upon receiving the transfer, Yunyan was moved and said, "Thank you, Miss Mina. You are Lanlan's friend, and of course you are also my friend. I am looking forward to your future performance." Mina is very confident in Yunyan. She had a strong premonition that Yunyan might be able to push the revenue to new heights and set off a frenzy. Yunyan quickly returned to her residence, but due to exhaustion, she fell asleep early. The next morning, Mina woke up and sent her messages and dance videos. The next stage she was going to perform was a classical dance. After reading it a few times, Yunyan has almost learned it. Next, just practice the details. The clothes at Mina's place didn't fit her well, so Yunyan decided to go to the mall to buy a set of dance clothes. She took a taxi to the mall and wandered around, but couldn't find her favorite style until she walked into a luxury brand store. Yunyan was admiring the selection of dresses when suddenly a familiar and harsh female voice came from behind. "Isn't this a cloud of smoke? Your father is almost in prison and still has the heart to go shopping and buy clothes here. You are really a filial piety." Yun Yen turned around and saw that the person who came was indeed her sharp and sarcastic cousin Yun Mengting. Her face suddenly turned cold. Yun Mengting, last time you plotted against me, I haven't settled the accounts with you yet. Yun Mengting shamelessly said, aren't I helping you? You should be grateful to me, right? If it weren't for me, could you sell for such a high price? Why pretend to be aloof? It's a pity that the old man didn't succeed, and I don't know who saved this lowly woman. Yun Yen sarcastically retorted, you must have personally traded a lot since you know the market so well. Yun Mengting was immediately so angry by her words that she wanted to smoke. Yun Yen. What's the noise? Accompanied by a proud voice, a woman with exquisite makeup and jewels walked in from outside, like a proud peacock, looking at Yun Yen unkindly. Who is she? Miss Jean, she. Yun Mengting looked at the woman with a hint of flattery in her eyes, trying to belittle Yun Yen. It's just a broken shoe that Gu Shao threw away. Yun Mengting, please keep your mouth clean. Yun Yen looked at this proud woman with a frosty face, neither humble nor aloof. She turned out to be the eldest daughter of the Jean family, Jean Beibei, and also the newly married wife after Gu Ziyu abandoned her. That's just it. Jean Beibei looked down at Yun Yen's delicate and beautiful face, with a hint of jealousy in her eyes and contempt in her mouth. As a person, you should have self-awareness. Don't think of things that don't belong to you. Even if a mountain chicken flies up a branch, it can't become a phoenix. With a sarcastic smile, Yun Yen retorted without hesitation, I don't know if the mountain chicken can turn into a phoenix, but I know that scumbags are like garbage and should stay in the trash can. You dare to scold me? Jean Beibei glared angrily, raising her hand to slap Yun Yen. Unexpectedly, Yun Yen grabbed her hand tightly and didn't even let her touch his face. He sneered, why, Miss Jean has taken the right seat. That's really embarrassing. Jean Beibei wanted to forcefully pull back her hand, but Yun Yen suddenly let go, almost causing her to fall into a dog eating shit, and her noble image collapsed, so embarrassed. Chapter 6. Shameless Fox Spirit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yun Yen didn't want to waste time with these two women anymore. She asked the salesperson to wrap up the dress she was interested in and decided to leave directly. Unexpectedly, Jean Beibei was waved by her and couldn't swallow her breath. She directly ordered the salesperson, I'll take this dress. It seems Miss Jean doesn't understand what, first come, first served, means, Yun Yen said coldly, how about coming first? What about coming later? As long as it's what I want, there's nothing I can't get. Jean Beibei hugged her arm and put on a high posture. Things are like this, so are people. The salesperson was in a dilemma, but in the end, he was afraid of offending Jean Beibei and silently followed suit. Yun Yen only found it very ridiculous that there are more than one beautiful dress and more than one man in this world. Just because Jean Beibei treats Gu Ziyu's garbage as a treasure doesn't mean she is either. Moreover, the things that could be stolen did not originally belong to her, and were not worth lingering on. Yun Yen didn't even bother to argue with Jean Beibei, let alone grab that dress. Instead, she chose another goose yellow dress. Unexpectedly, Jean Beibei snorted coldly and immediately repeated her old trick, I'll take this dress too. Next, no matter which dress Yun Yen was interested in, Jean Beibei would snatch it without concealing her sharp confrontation. Yun Mengting was also stirring up trouble nearby, fearing that the world would not be chaotic. Yun Yan's beautiful eyes rolled silently, making a look that was infuriated by them, with an expression that was both ugly and helpless. This instantly restored Jean Beibei's sense of superiority. Immediately after, Yun Yen took a liking to several dresses, all of which were forcefully snatched away by Jean Beibei, one after another as if they were free of money. Yun Yen noticed that the salesperson was trying to suppress a smile on his face while packaging the dress, and he was afraid that his heart was about to burst with joy. Jean Beibei thought she had trampled on her dignity and lifted her chin like a proud peacock, fight with me, do you have the qualification? Yun Yan remained silent, just waiting to watch the play. The salesperson suppressed his excitement and said, Miss Jean, are you checking out now? Jean Bebe looked contemptuously at Yun Yan and confidently took out a card. How much does it cost in total? Swipe the card, she said. The salesperson quickly typed the calculator and replied, the total is 28 million. Jean Bebe's eyes widened instantly, thinking that there was something wrong with her ears. She exclaimed in a sharp voice, what did you say? Did you miscalculate? Miss Jean, the dresses you have chosen are all high luxury items in our store. The salesperson saw her react so fiercely and cautiously introduced them. Jean Bebe just realized that the dresses Yun Yan chose were the most expensive in the store. If it weren't intentional, I'm afraid a fool would believe it. Damn it, she fell for this bitch's trap. Jean Bebe was about to explode with anger, but Yun Yan spoke up first and deliberately said. Miss Jean snatched so many dresses, isn't it just to show off her face in front of me? Actually, she didn't even plan to buy them, did she? As soon as these words were spoken, other guests also immediately looked over, and the flames of gossip in their eyes burned brightly. Jean Bebe knows that if she doesn't brush these 28 million today, she will spread throughout the upper echelons of the capital tomorrow. She couldn't afford to throw away this person, took a fierce look at Yun Yan, gritted her teeth to pay the bill, her heart dripping with blood. Yun Yan, wait for me. Yun Mengting, who had achieved great success from a petty person, did not expect things to develop like this. Perhaps Jean Bebe would have to vent her anger when she returned. It's all the fault of this slut Yun Yan. She said angrily, Yun Yan, you are really a good tool. Compared to your despicability and shamelessness, it's better to accept, Yun Yan retorted without losing face, don't be too proud, there will always be times when you cry. Yun Mengting put down her harsh words and hurriedly chased after Jean Bebe. After the two of them left, the other guests had no excitement to watch and gradually dispersed. Yun Yan arrived at the front desk, and the salesperson immediately changed his familiar expression. Yun Yan, you really opened my eyes today, she said in admiration. Since they took the initiative to humiliate me first, I don't need to be polite and let their wallets bleed a bit, Yun Yan said with a faint expression. Because she used to come here often to buy clothes, she and the salesperson were also familiar, and a glance was tacit. The win-win situation, the other party is also happy to cooperate, only Jean Bebe and Yun Mengting are in the dark, thinking they can humiliate Yun Yan. It's not just bleeding a little, it's really bleeding a lot. The salesperson smiled and transferred money to Yun Yan on his phone. This order is 200,000 yuan, please check it. Happy cooperation. Yun Yan accepted the money and knew that the other party could receive nearly 2 million commission for this order, so she did not refuse. Besides, she needs money. A few days later, Yun Yan came to work at the bar. She danced an ancient-style dance, her mask changed to a veil, light and ethereal, like a crane bathed in the light of the dawn, making it impossible to move her gaze away. Compared to the last time, Yun Yan had already calmed down a lot when she saw Gu Chenyuan. Anyway, he doesn't know who she is, so why bother messing around? Tonight, Gu Chenyuan remains the highest-paying guest, and according to the rules, Yun Yan will offer him a toast. But Gu Chenyuan had to leave early for something, so he naturally avoided the last step of the procedure. After learning about it, Yun Yan quietly breathed a sigh of relief. She went to the changing room to change clothes, but accidentally bumped into a woman on the road, and the veil that covered her appearance fell off, revealing her bright face. Sorry, Yun Yan quickly apologized, but the other party did not investigate and let her go. Just Yun Yan didn't know. As soon as she left in the front, the woman in the back called Yun Mengting and said, Mengting, I saw your cousin Yun Yan at the night bar. She's a dancer. In the next few days, Gu Chenyuan did not come back to the bar. Yun Yan's performance is getting better and better, receiving a lot of votes, but since the highest number of votes is no longer her, she doesn't need to toast. She also enjoys being idle. That night, Yun finished her dance and was about to step down. Unexpectedly, a chubby and imposing woman suddenly burst into the bar, with several burly bodyguards behind her. "Is it you shameless fox spirit who seduces my husband?" The obese woman glanced at the number tag attached to Yun's body, as if she was a target, pointing at her nose and cursing, "Little bitch, see if I won't kill you today." "Did you misunderstand something?" Before Yun could even explain, the obese woman rushed up and slapped her in the face, pop. Yun suddenly fell onto the stage, her veil falling off, her cheeks burning with pain, and her ears buzzing incessantly. No sound could be heard. This incident came unexpectedly, and no one reacted. The security guard wanted to come forward and stop it, but they were stopped by those bodyguards. The obese woman clearly came prepared and grabbed Yun's delicate and fragile neck. Her fierce and vicious appearance made her wish to kill her. Chapter 7. Who is the consort? You are listening at novel.full.audio. Yun struggled desperately, but could not resist the power of the obese woman. Soon, she was pinched and her face turned red, gradually turning purple-red. Just as she thought she was about to be choked to death, she heard a loud bang and a crystal ashtray hit her, accurately hitting the obese woman's wrist. The obese woman suddenly felt a severe pain, and her wrist bone seemed to break. She let go with a scream. Yun finally gained the freedom to breathe, panting heavily. "Who is it?" The obese woman regained her composure and became furious, but before she could have a fit, she was thrown to the ground by a powerful and terrifying force, making a heavy muffled sound, and her coccyx almost broke. "Duh. The sound of a man stepping on his leather shoes seemed to fall on everyone's heart, making him inexplicably tremble. The obese woman looked up and saw his face clearly, and her expression suddenly changed. She trembled incredulously and said, "Gu. Chenyuan looked down at her from a high position, his narrow and deep phoenix eyes full of coldness, emitting a chilly aura all over him, almost freezing everyone into ice. "Get lost." The obese woman's heart pounded fiercely, and she dared not resent the famous Erye. She could only point her spear at Yun and say, "Erye. Don't be deceived by this woman. She's just a shameless slut, seducing men everywhere and even my husband." "Who is your husband?" Chenyuan interrupted. The obese woman instinctively replied, "He is the CEO of Lee's Pharmaceutical. Next week's acquisition plan, add Lee's Pharmaceutical." Chenyuan's tone was as casual as instructing his assistant to dispose of garbage, but a few words instantly determined the fate of a company. Lin Ching immediately noted, "Yes, Mr. Gu." Everyone present suddenly took a cold breath. If the person who said this was someone else, they might feel like they were pretending to be coercing. But the speaker is Chenyuan. Half of the capital's capital is surnamed Gu, and the person in power who holds Chenyuan's position at the peak, evenly pharmaceutical, is not qualified to offer him shoes. Attempting to acquire him is just a verbal gesture. What? The obese woman finally regained her senses and couldn't believe what she had heard. She was instantly shocked and said in a sharp voice, "Mr. Gu, you can't do this. Naughty." Chenyuan frowned impatiently and said coldly, "Throw it out." As the words fell, someone immediately stepped forward and tightly blocked the obese woman's mouth, dragging her out like a dead dog. Her bodyguard was pressed and rubbed fiercely by Chenyuan's people on the ground. The obese woman struggled desperately, her face full of despair. Because she knew that Master Gu's eloquence was not a joke on her. A fat woman can't figure it out. She just received news to tidy up a dancer her husband has been obsessed with lately, and unexpectedly, such a mishap came. At this moment, her intestines are turning blue with regret, but everything is difficult to bring to an end. Lee's pharmaceutical industry is finished, and she is also finished. Yun Yen sat on the ground still feeling a bit scared. She looked up at the tall and handsome man, as if she had seen a deity descending from the sky, forgetting even her breath. Gu Chenyuan saved her again. Can you stand up? Gu Chenyuan looked down at the girl on the ground, like a king looking down at his people, not angry but proud. Neng. Yun Yen spoke, her throat aching like a knife, making it difficult to speak. Gu Chenyuan frowned and said, "Come with me." Yun Yen followed him with some stumbling steps. The scene was completely silent, and no one dared to discuss the sudden uproar. Gu Chenyuan drove Yun Yen directly to the hospital. After diagnosis, the doctor said, "Miss Yun has injured her throat, but it's not a big deal. Next, she needs to take good care of herself, take medication according to the doctor's instructions, and speak as little as possible." "Thank you, doctor." Yun Yen felt much better after treatment. After thanking the doctor, she thanked Gu Chenyuan again. "Thank you for saving me, little uncle. If it weren't for Gu Chenyuan's timely intervention, she would likely have been strangled to death by that obese woman today." At that moment, she realized how close she was to death. Gu Chenyuan is undoubtedly her life-saving benefactor. Gu Chenyuan glanced at Yun Yen. The purple-red pinch marks on her neck looked somewhat alarming, as if there were flaws on the jade, inexplicably making her feel unhappy. He didn't say anything and sent Yun Yen home. The car drove downstairs, and Yun Yen thought of Gu Chenyuan saving her today. She had nothing in return except for verbal gratitude, which made her feel a bit embarrassed. By a stroke of luck, she took the initiative to invite and said, "Uncle, do you want to go up and have a cup of tea?" Gu Chenyuan seemed surprised and raised his eyebrows lightly. Yun Yen thought he would refuse, but he didn't expect Gu Erye to slowly speak up. "Sure." The clouds and smoke lingered for half a second. The man glanced sideways and said, "Not welcome." Yun Yen quickly reacted and explained, "Of course not, it's just that my family is a bit rudimentary. I hope you don't mind." "Guide the way," Gu Chenyuan said concisely. The car was parked, and Yun Yen took Gu Chenyuan back to the apartment he is currently renting. Speaking of which, it was her first time bringing someone back, and the other person was still an adult man, somewhat uncomfortable. The door lock was opened, and the layout of one room and one living room caught the eye. Yun Yen didn't have any men's slippers at home, so he decided to let Gu Chenyuan in with his shoes on. Gu Chenyuan surveyed the small room. Although sparrows are small, they have all their internal organs and everything they should have. They are clean and warm, and the air is filled with a faint fragrance. Everywhere is the breath of life filled with clouds and smoke. "I only have fruit tea here," Yun Yen said with some embarrassment. "I don't know if you're used to drinking it, uncle." Gu Chenyuan didn't care much. "It's okay." Since he had said so, Yun Yen had no worries. He brewed a pot of fruit tea and cut some fresh fruits to entertain Gu Chenyuan. Gu Chenyuan didn't eat any fruit, only drank tea. Two people sat face to face, Yun Yen speechless for a moment, unsure of what to say. And at that moment, the doorbell rang. A doubt flashed in Yun Yen's eyes. Who would come to find her so late? Until a familiar male voice came through, "Yun Yen, I know you're inside. Open the door. This is the last chance I'll give you, otherwise I'll make you regret it." "It's Gu Ziyu who came knocking on your door." Yun Yan's face slightly changed and she instinctively looked at Gu Chenyuan. If Gu Ziyu discovers that Gu Chenyuan is here, the consequences would be unimaginable. Gu Ziyu's voice was full of arrogance. "Do you think I can't find out without you saying it? I will definitely find that adulterer and make him kneel down to beg for mercy." All his words fell into Gu Chenyuan's ears without a word. The man narrowed his narrow and deep phoenix eyes, and his gaze fell heavily on Yun Yen. He said meaningfully, "Consort." Chapter 8. Don't tease casually. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing Gu Chenyuan say these two words, Yun Yan's heart tightened sharply, as if being tightly grasped by a big hand. She said dryly, "Uncle, don't listen to him talk nonsense." Gu Chenyuan gave her a deep glance and raised his eyebrows lightly. "Don't open the door. Can't drive." Yun Yan didn't want to say. Gu Chenyuan's eyes lit up and he said, "Why, I'm afraid he'll know you have a man here." Yun Yan smelled a hint of danger hidden in the man's tone and remedied, "No, I'm afraid he might offend uncle." "He dares," Gu Chenyuan said. "But he will trouble me." Yun Yan nibbled on her lips and looked at Gu Chenyuan with a hint of pleading. "Uncle, don't open the door. She's not afraid of Gu Ziyu, she just doesn't want things to become more complicated. The most important thing at the moment is to rescue Yun Bai." In her tense gaze, Gu Chenyuan slowly turned the teacup, and the originally ordinary tea set seemed to become high-end and elegant between his slender fingers. Continuing the tea, he said casually. Yun Yan was momentarily stunned, and soon understood Gu Chenyuan's meaning. She breathed a sigh of relief and immediately added more tea. Gu Chenyuan called outside for a while, but didn't hear anything. Gradually, his voice disappeared, and he didn't know if he had left. Just as Yun Yan was about to approach the cat's eye in front of the door and take a closer look, the overhead light suddenly went out with a snap, and the entire room fell into darkness. How could there be a sudden power outage? She soon realized that it was very likely that Gu Ziyu had pulled the power switch outside, trying to force her to open the door. Yun Yan was furious, but at this moment she was helpless and felt even more embarrassed towards Gu Chenyuan. After all, it was she who took the initiative to invite the other party, but did not entertain them well. "Uncle, please sit still while I go find the candle." In the darkness, she could see nothing and could only rely on her own feelings to grope along. As the saying goes, if a person is unlucky enough to drink cold water, they will have their teeth stuffed. Yun Yan quickly confirmed this statement. He stumbled over something under his feet, and his body instantly lost balance and fell heavily. She thought she would have a bruised nose and swollen face, but didn't want her petite body to fall into a cold embrace. The cold cedar scent enveloped her, but it brought a strong sense of peace of mind. It was Gu Chenyuan who caught her. "Thank you, uncle." Yun Yan regained consciousness, blushing uncontrollably. Fortunately, no one saw him in the darkness. She immediately wanted to get up from Gu Chenyuan, but her slender waist was restrained by the man's slender and powerful arms, unable to move. Yun Yan felt a bit panicked and struggled slightly. At this moment, Gu Ziyu's voice rang out again, "Yun Yan, I warn you not to toast, not to eat, and not to be punished. You have been with me, and you are my woman. Even if you die, you are my ghost. Don't think about going out and hooking up with men." Yun Yan listened to his words while maintaining an intimate posture with Gu Chenyuan. For some reason, a strong sense of bad ethics swept over her. In the darkness, I don't know who hit who first, as if igniting a raging fire. The man pressed her on his lap, pinched her waist, and fiercely kissed her lips. "Mm." Yun Yan involuntarily let out a whimper, somewhat unbearable. But the man showed no mercy and kissed even more fiercely, gnawing at the corner of her mouth like a wolf. His clever tongue pried open her teeth, aggressively attacking the city and plundering her sweet breath. Yun Yan only felt herself floating and sinking, like a small boat in the surging waves, instinctively reaching out to hook Gu Chenyuan's neck. The temperature inside the house was instantly hot. And outside, Gu Ziyu was still threatening, "Yun Yan, don't think that everything will be fine if you hide inside and don't come out. I'll tell you, I won't just forget it. I'll definitely find that adulterer." I don't know if it was because the word adulterer that stimulated Gu Chenyuan. He kissed even more fiercely and even bit through Yun Yan's lips. "Woo!" Yun Yan breathed in pain and let out a whimper like a kitten. Then the man comforted her again, repeatedly licking her wounds, his tongue tirelessly rolling away the sweet and bloody beads. I don't know how long this kiss lasted. Until the lights inside suddenly lit up, the darkness faded, and all ambiguity and passion were exposed to the bright light. Yun tightly closed her eyes, and it took several seconds for her to overcome the sudden pain of the light. As she opened her eyes, her rationality also followed suit. Everything in front of her made her stiff like a fossil. Chenyuan sat on the sofa, his collar a bit messy. He unbuttoned a few buttons, revealing his sturdy and sexy chest. He could vaguely see a few red scratches. Despite this, he is still well dressed. On the other hand, looking at oneself, her shirt buttons were all unbuttoned, half hanging on her arm, revealing a large area of snow-white shoulders. The spring light on her chest was also visible, and even her skirt was pulled down to her calves, tightly pressed against Chenyuan, sitting on his lap. This scene made Yunyan's face instantly turn red, hot and steaming, just like cooked shrimp. If it weren't for the sudden lighting up, it's hard to imagine what would happen next. Yunyan felt ashamed and almost immediately got up from Chenyuan, hurriedly tidying up her clothes and not daring to look at him. She subconsciously said, "I didn't mean to. It's not intentional, that's just casually using me for entertainment." Chenyuan squinted and his gaze fell coldly on Yunyan, full of pressure. "I didn't." Yunyan's heart skipped a beat. How dare she entertain Chenyuan? "Yunyan, this is the second time." Chenyuan reached out and grabbed her chin, forcing her to face him. His fingertips rubbed heavily against the wound on her lips, as if punishing her. "If you're not interested in a man, then don't tease him casually," he said. Yunyan's heart trembled heavily. Facing the man's pitch-black eyes, his soul seemed to fall into an abyss without a bottom, forgetting even his breath. Until Chenyuan left, she struggled to regain her senses for a long time, and the man's words echoed repeatedly in her ears, making it difficult for the temperature on her cheeks to dissipate. That night, Yunyan couldn't sleep all night. The next day, Mina called her to inquire about her situation. "Yunyan, are you okay? I didn't expect something like this to happen yesterday when I wasn't around. Have you seen it at the hospital? I will reimburse the medical expenses." Mina felt very guilty about this. "I'm fine, Miss Mina. Don't tell Lon about this." "I don't want her to worry," Yunyan said in a calm and gentle tone. "Okay," Mina reluctantly agreed, then remembered something and tentatively said, "I heard it was Mr. Gu who saved you yesterday." Speaking of Chenyuan, Yunyan couldn't help but think of what happened last night. Her face was once again hot, and there was a feeling of inexplicable guilt. She tried to answer in a plain tone, "Maybe I can't see through it." Chapter 9. Serve Laozi well first. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Mina didn't continue to ask, but said, "I understand everything now. The woman who hit you is Mrs. Li, a famous jealous woman in Beijing. Her husband has been spending a lot of money with us recently, and she probably found out about it, which is why she came here to go crazy." She paused for a moment and then added, "But don't worry, she won't trouble you again in the future." Yunyan asked reflexively, "Why?" Mina smiled and said, "Don't you know yet? Li's pharmaceutical has been acquired by Gu's group today, and Mrs. Li will no longer have the capital to show off her power." Yunyan was stunned at the words, but she didn't listen to anything Mina said next. Her mind was full of the acquisition of Li's pharmaceutical. It's hard even for her to believe that this matter has nothing to do with her. Thinking of Chenyuan, a feeling of inexplicability surged in her heart, with a complex palpitations. In the following days, Yunyan would dance part-time at the night bar on time every week, but Chenyuan did not appear again. Sometimes when she stands on stage, she instinctively looks at the position where Chenyuan often sits. There is nothing in that empty place. Yunyan's heart seemed to be somewhat empty, which was strange. I don't know if it's because of Chenyuan. It's difficult for her to have no guests in the bar, but correspondingly, there are very few people who support her. So by the end of the competition, she didn't win the championship, but Yunyan wasn't greedy. She only needed to earn the money she needed. Yun Yan took the 3 million yuan he had pieced together and went to Lu Zheng's law firm again, full of hope in his heart, but did not want bad news to come. The front desk told her, Lawyer Lu's case has been scheduled for next year and will not be accepted. Yun Yan's face changed as he was struck by lightning, and he exclaimed urgently, how could this be? I want to see Lawyer Lu, is that okay? My case is really urgent, please be accommodating. Sorry, I can't accommodate you. The front desk mercilessly refused her. Yun Yan refused to leave, thinking that she would see Lu Jing no matter what, and ask him to help her father who had suffered unjustly. Unexpectedly, a strange phone call came at this moment, and she hesitated for a moment to connect. Hello, may I ask if you are Ms. Song's family member? She fainted on the way and is currently undergoing emergency treatment in our hospital. We hope you can come over as soon as possible. The words of the hospital staff instantly turned Yun Yan's face pale. She had no intention of staying any longer and rushed to the hospital immediately. After the doctor's efforts in rescuing her, Song Yalan finally managed to turn the tide in her heart, which was hanging in the clouds, finally landed. Song Yalan woke up and her eyes immediately turned red when she saw Yun Yan. Yan, your father has pleaded guilty. We need to have an early court hearing now. When she received this news, she was furious and fainted on the street. What? Yun Yan's beautiful pupils suddenly tightened, looking at Song Yalan incredulously. How could this be? Song Yalan cried and shook her head, they won't let me see your father, Yan. You must find a way to save him. I will figure out what's going on, Mom, don't worry. Yun Yan tried to stabilize her emotions and reassured Song Yalan before leaving the hospital and heading to the detention center. But she couldn't see Yun Bai either, and for a moment she didn't know what to do. Yun Bai is clearly unjustly accused, how could he possibly plead guilty? Unless someone threatens him. Yun Yan immediately thought of Gu Ziyu, no one else would do such a thing. Yun Yan's guess is correct, and this matter is indeed related to Gu Ziyu. Gu Ziyu has been investigating Yun Yan's adulterer recently, hoping to dig deep and find the man who gave him a green hat, but there has been no result. He became angry with embarrassment and knew what Yun Yan cared about, so he naturally wanted to use Yun Bai for surgery. And what Yun Bai cares about the most is Yun Yan's mother and daughter. With just a slight threat, he confessed directly, which is so foolish. Yun Yan took the initiative to find Gu Ziyu, hoping to confirm his conjecture. Gu Ziyu seemed to have anticipated it long ago and booked a private room in advance, allowing Yun Yan to pass by. As soon as Yun Yan arrived there, before he could question Gu Ziyu what was going on, he hugged her tightly and caressed her waist with his big hand. Yun Yan was startled and immediately struggled, Gu Ziyu, what are you doing? What are you doing? Fuck you. Gu Ziyu's slender and powerful arms restrained her, preventing her from having any chance of escaping. Yun Yan's face turned red with anger, you let go of me. Gu Ziyu sneered and said harshly and obscenely, what are you pretending to be? Aren't you here just for your father's business? Serve me well first, otherwise we won't talk. Gu Ziyu, you're shameless. Yun Yan was so angry that her whole body trembled. It was because her mind was flooded that she thought about having a good conversation with this scumbag. That's not as cheap as you. Gu Ziyu's anger surged in his heart as he thought of the smoke he couldn't bear to touch being touched by another man. He said without hesitation, how is that adulterer's bed skills? Can you please him? Yun Yan listened to the foul language in his mouth and felt that her ears were all contaminated. In a fit of desperation, she lifted her leg and kicked him hard 3 times. Gu Ziyu was caught off guard and never expected Yun Yan to do so. The man's most vulnerable area was heavily hit, and he let out a scream in an instant. Yun Yan immediately took advantage of this opportunity to escape and ran out without looking back, as if there were some fierce beasts chasing behind. Gu Ziyu arched his body like a shrimp, covering his injured area with a pale face, almost biting his teeth. Cloud, smoke. Yun Yen didn't expect Gu Ziyu to do such a dirty thing, and he was so nauseous that he felt nauseous. Even if she were dead, she wouldn't beg for this scumbag. All Yun Yen's hopes were placed on Lu Zheng, waiting for him at the door of the law firm. Unexpectedly, he actually waited for Lu Zheng. She heard someone shout, "Lawyer Lu," and immediately followed her forward, but the next second she was stopped by security and couldn't get close to the other person. Lawyer Lu hurriedly got into the car, and Yun Yen only had time to catch a glance at his profile, feeling somewhat familiar. Yun Yen bit his lip and stopped a taxi, following behind Lu Zheng's car. Until the car stopped in front of the skyscraper at the headquarters of Gu Group, Lu Zheng walked in. In Yun Yan's mind, there was a flash of carbide fire, and finally she remembered it. On the night she toasted Gu Chenyuan, one of the men sitting next to him was Lu Zheng. If she asks Gu Chenyuan for help, will the success rate be higher? But they had such an unpleasant time before. Will he help her? Yun Yen had no bottom in her heart, but this idea came out of her lifetime and could not be dispelled. Chapter 10. Please put on your clothes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yun Yen thought of Yun Bai in the prison and Song Yalan in the hospital, bit her lip, and after a while of psychological construction, she finally mustered the courage to enter the Gu Group. Unexpectedly, the security guard immediately stopped her from entering and said coldly, "I'm sorry, Mississippi. Do you have an appointment? You can't enter without an appointment." Yun Yen was originally a last-minute gesture, so there were no appointments. In a hurry, he could only say, "I know Mr. Gu, we are friends, and I have something to say to him." Excuses like yours make our ears almost cocoon. One of the security guard's eyes flashed with mockery, clearly treating Yun Yen as those women who wanted to climb the ranks. No matter who you are, you can't take a step forward without an appointment. I really have something very important, can I be accommodating? Yun Yen gritted her teeth and took out several thick stacks of red banknotes from her bag, stuffing them into the hands of the security guard. The security guard's face changed drastically and he said coldly, "Miss, this is a bribery act. Please leave, otherwise don't blame us for being impolite." Yun Yen had no choice but to finally meet Lu Zheng today. She couldn't miss this opportunity as Yun Bai couldn't afford to wait anymore. She never stops, taking advantage of the security guard's lack of attention and charging straight inside. But the security guard came to his senses and quickly stopped her, pushing her to the ground with a very rude gesture. "You woman, can't you understand? You dare to break in?" Yun Yen fell heavily to the ground, her fair and tender arms leaving a bloody mark. The pain was so intense that her face turned pale. A few security guards were about to drag her away, but were stopped in time by a clear male voice, "Stop." Several people looked at it at the same time and saw a man in a suit and leather shoes walking out of it, who was Gu Chenyuan's special assistant. Lin Cheng. The security guard recognized Lin Cheng's identity and his expression immediately became respectful. He reported, "Lin Tezu, this woman of unknown origin said she knows Mr. Gu and wants to break into the company. Don't worry, we will handle it immediately." "Her confirmation is Mr. Gu," Lin Cheng interrupted them directly. He did not forget that Mr. Gu, who was angry at his own company, had acquired Li's pharmaceutical for his beauty. At least at this stage, Miss Yun Yen has caught Mr. Gu's attention. Upon hearing Lin Cheng's words, the faces of several security guards instantly changed, especially when they saw Lin Cheng personally lift Yun Yen up, they were even more stunned. Lin Cheng is a big shot around Mr. Gu, and someone who can make him treat him so politely must have a close relationship with Mr. Gu, but they have offended him severely. Yun Yen didn't notice the change in the security guard's expression. She recognized Lin Cheng's identity and knew that he was Gu Chenyuan's confidant, which made her happy. "Lin Tezu, you can take me inside to meet Uncle." She almost blurted out "Uncle," but changed her mind in a timely manner. "See Mr. Gu. Please help me. I have something very important to talk to him, please." Lin Cheng's expression paused and said, sure, Miss Yun, please come with me. Yun Yan's eyes immediately lit up with a ray of hope, and he didn't even feel the pain in his injuries. He immediately followed behind Lin Cheng and finally walked smoothly into the Gu group. Lin Cheng took her to the dedicated elevator, which was unobstructed all the way to the CEO's office on the 29th floor. Miss Yun, Mr. Gu is busy. Please sit here and wait for a while. Okay, thank you, Lin Tezu. Yun Yan looked at the redwood door of the office and inexplicably became nervous, repeatedly typing and thinking about how to speak to Gu Chenyuan later. At this moment, Lu Zheng happened to have finished talking with Gu Chenyuan and walked out of the office. Yun Yan's eyes lit up when she saw Lu Zheng. She took a few steps forward to stop him and said, "Lawyer Lu, please wait." Lu Zheng looked at her inexplicably. Yun Yan spoke quickly and said, "My father was wrongly imprisoned and the case is complicated. Please help us, and I will definitely repay your kindness." "Sorry, miss," Lu Zheng said in a business tone, "I won't take on the case for now." Yun Yan said anxiously, "Lawyer Lu, our situation is really urgent." Lu Zheng said ruthlessly, "This has nothing to do with me." Yun Yan was immediately choked on by his words, and her face turned red with anxiety. When she wanted to say something, Lin Cheng interrupted. "Miss Yun, Mr. Gu let you in." Yun Yan had to swallow the request and watched helplessly as Lu Zheng bypassed her and quickly left here. Yun Yan's gaze couldn't help but darken, and he followed behind Lin Cheng with his eyes down as he walked into Gu Chenyuan's office. In an instant, a powerful pressure struck. Gu Chenyuan's deep gaze fell on her, and as soon as he spoke, he was calm and self-righteous. "Come to me to find Lawyer Lu." "No, actually I'm here to find you, uncle," Yun Yan said under pressure. "Uncle." Gu Chenyuan chuckled lightly, as if he had heard a joke. He asked back intentionally or unintentionally, "Miss Yun, could you tell me which school of uncle I am from?" Yun Yan's face turned red, and she knew she had thick skin. She immediately changed her voice and requested, "Mr. Gu, you should be very familiar with Lawyer Lu, right? Can you help me?" Before she could finish speaking, Gu Chenyuan coldly interrupted her and said, "Miss Yun, why should I help you?" Yun Yan took a deep breath and promised, "I will repay you." "Miss Yun, you will repay me." "You have said this sentence at least 3 times, Gu Chenyuan said with a hint of playfulness in his dark night-like eyes, "but until now, there seems to be no action. It seems that you are really good at just talking without doing anything." Upon hearing these words, Yun Yan's face turned red with a brush. "No, I." Gu Chenyuan waited expressionlessly for her next message. "I know what you want," Yun Yan said, biting her lips hard and pausing word by word. Gu Chenyuan's black eyes darkened without a trace. He reached out and tugged at his tie, his voice deep and magnetic, like a collision of metals. "What do I want?" Yun Yan seemed to have made some major decision and slowly walked up to Gu Chenyuan. She trembled and unbuttoned her hands, revealing her fair neck and delicate collarbone. "Miss Yun, what are you doing?" Gu Chenyuan looked at Yun Yan from a high position, his eyes pitch black and dark, like an indelible thick ink. "I'm not a casual man, please put on your clothes." At this moment, the clouds and smoke froze. She seemed to have been slapped hard in the face, her face burning with embarrassment, and she wanted to find a hole to burrow into on the spot. Gu Chenyuan's tone was cold and heartless, and every word he spoke was like a needle, piercing into Yun Yan's heart fiercely. "As long as you have something to ask for, you can casually undress a man. Women, it's better to have some self-love." Another invisible slap hit Yun Yan's face, and she felt so ashamed for the first time, as if in Gu Chenyuan's eyes she had become a frivolous and vulgar slut.